Good morning. How are you guys? You guys are excited. I don't know why we ever put certain people on camera. Tommy just got way too excited. I'm not really sure what happened there. We're going to have to follow up with him and rein him in a little bit. Man, I'm excited that you guys are with us as we continue in our series, Beautiful Collision. We're in week 3 now, and we're going to be in Genesis chapter 40. Genesis chapter 40 is where we're going to be. So if you don't have a Bible, you can pick them up for free. And I know you won't, like some people are like, man, when you say that, I don't want to get up because everybody will think I don't have a Bible. And that's fine. You can get up. You can do whatever. You can go grab one of those. You can also download an easy-to-read translation of the Bible on your mobile device and journey with us today, as well as you can go by the App Store and you can download the Forefront app to be able to keep up with notes and other things that are going on. You can keep up with other series. You can get connected to our Joe groups that are happening, which kicked off this past week. How many of you guys went to a Joe group this past week? Yeah, a lot of you guys. There were more of you than that. I don't even want to hear them. I don't want to raise my hand. I'm scared. That's okay. I won't judge you. And so, man, I tell you what, our Joe group had a bunch of fun, and we laughed at each other, and we kind of got to know one another and play games. And all of a sudden, we did this game where everybody was acting out different stuff that people wrote down. And apparently, this is what Taylor Swift looks like when she does stuff. I'm not going to name who in our Joe group did that, but I thought they were having a seizure. Is what they were doing is they were acting it out, and I won't show you the things that they did for Donald Trump, and it was interesting to say the least. And so, man, I tell you what, if you're not in a Joe group, I would highly recommend that you get in one to be able to engage what's happening here on another level and to be able to just walk this out with other people. I'm excited today for us getting into this week in particular because we've been walking through the life of this guy named Joseph and looking at what does it mean when our lives, and Jessica kind of painted that picture of when our crazy collides with God's redemption and grace. When our mess and all of our stuff collides with God's freedom. What does that look like for you and I? And we've talked about how we don't want to learn from somebody who like their life collides with God and then everything's fine and they're good. We want to study and learn from somebody who their life collides with God and then things don't go well. Because the reality is that you and I walk through life, and throughout this journey from the moment that we started breathing to the moment we stop breathing, and we are going to hit hardships and things that knock us down and things that feel like we can never get back up. And I love walking through the life of Joseph because it teaches some real practical ways to do that. And before we jump in today, I want to pray for us as we go through this over the next 30 minutes. And then next week as we wrap up of what does it look like for you and I, whether we are close to God today, whether we feel like we are so far from Him, what does it look like to dive into that and say, all right, God, I'm in. Now, what do I do with this and how do I battle through that? So why don't you pray with me? God, I thank you that we get to be your church. I thank you that we get an opportunity to love you and accept your hope and your grace and your mercy because let's face it, a lot of us, as a matter of fact, all of us need a second chance because we make mistakes and we hurt. And I pray right now for everybody in this room and people that are listening online and watching online, as we begin to take those steps, that there are plenty of things that are trying to pull us back and keep us from engaging faith in a journey and a life with you. May you keep those things at bay so that we can follow you closely and honor you with every part of our lives. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. This guy Joseph, it's real interesting as we've walked through his journey. And kind of, if you haven't been with us or you missed a week in particular, I want to take a couple minutes just to walk through what we've been looking at. You see, in his life, he was the youngest son. He had some older brothers, and he was known by his dad as the favorite. And because of this, his dad treated him a little differently because of the way that he not only honored God, but lived his life. And his brothers hated this. And so his brothers ended up one day as he was walking through, after he explained to them that he had these dreams, these promises that God had given him. And I would say that as we track with Joseph's life, that you and I all have a promise. I believe we actually have a couple of promises. One that is very general and broad with God is that God promises that you and I can find hope and peace and redemption in him. And that a more specific promise that you get, unlike anyone else, because you're uniquely made by God, that God has a plan and a trajectory to your life as you follow and honor him. And so Joseph gets this purpose, he gets this promise and this dream from God, and as he's following that out and he gets this dream, he tells his brothers end up beating him up, covering his garments in blood, selling him into slavery, convincing his parents are dead. He's in slavery. He gets to this place. God's still protecting him, even when we think things are hard. And then he gets to this place where he's looking over, this guy Potiphar is looking over his entire estate. And then his wife, who is like, and Chris actually tweeted out, I think last week, Potiphar hashtag the original cougar, which I was like, eh. And so she is chasing after Joseph, and it's noted in there that he is of a fine stature, that he is an attractive guy, and we kind of likened it to Bradley Cooper, and we had to calm you ladies down. And so he's going through this, and she's basically attacking him and grabbing at him and shouting at him to go and do things that we will not speak of. And he rejects her, but in the moment, as he's rejecting her, it says that she takes his cloak and he runs off with it still in her hand. Is that she ends up getting him in trouble, lying and saying that he tried to come after her, and he gets thrown in jail. And we ended last week going, well, he was thrown in jail, but it said that God was still protecting him, and he was shown favor by those in charge. And all the while going through this, parents think I'm dead, sold into slavery, in this house, this crazy lady's chasing me. Then I get sent into jail. Thanks God, I love following you. It's awesome. You go, man, no, that could probably be kind of hard. And we catch up with Joseph's life as he is in prison, and he's been given some duties and things to keep him moving a little bit more. And we catch up with these two guys that had been thrown into prison because the king at the time just says, you know what, I'm really not fond of you right now and the things that you're doing. And so you're going to go to prison because I'm the king, I can do what I want. And he throws him into prison where Joseph is. And we catch up with Joseph in Genesis 40. We're going to read a few verses here and talk about them, read and talk some. And so if you have a Bible, you can open up there. If not, it'll be here on the screen. So sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offered their master, the king of Egypt, offended their master, the king of Egypt. Sometimes the hamster falls asleep at the wheel. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And then he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended to them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, were being held in prison, had a dream the same night. Each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. They were down and out. They didn't know what their dreams mean. So he asked the Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "I don't know, Joseph. They're in prison." "All right, buddy, like get a clue." And he said, "No, there was something extra awful about it." It says, we had both had dreams," they answered, "but there's no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams." Tell me your dreams. You know, we catch up with these guys as they're in here and they start having these dreams. And so he asks them, "What were your dreams?" And so the cupbearer, cupbearer would have been like the worst job. You see, a lot of people would want to kill high up officials. There would be people who would stop at nothing to make sure that they were dead. And so the cupbearer's job was, before anything would get to the king's lips, whether it be food or drink, is that he would go over and take a swig, and if he didn't die, then the king would drink it. And so, anybody want to sign up for that job? Yeah, not me, Jack. I'm not doing that. And so as he's in this position, He says, listen, I've had this dream, and there were these things that were over me, and I see Pharaoh's cup and this vine, and people, I was pouring out the juice in this vine, and I have no clue what this means. He says, listen, and he explains to them that there was a few of these things, and after 3 days that Pharaoh is actually going to reinstate you to your previous position. And he's like, all right. But he says, hey, listen, I interpreted your dream, and this is God's way of doing this, and so don't forget me. And all of a sudden, the soundtrack comes in, don't you forget. No, just kidding. And so some of you guys are like, what is going on there? And so it comes in, and he's excited, and he's like, all right, I've done this. In 3 days, he's going to get out, and he's going to remember me. All right, and then so the baker's like, all right, they're like, dreams. Let me tell you about my dream. You see, there were these 3 baskets, and they were full of bread, and then they were resting on my head, and there were all these loaves, and there was birds picking at them. And Joseph looks at him, he's like, yeah, all right, I got to tell you. In a few days, Pharaoh's going to impale you, and birds are going to be just picking away at your flesh. He's like, can I get a do-over on that dream? Can we change this around a little bit? And sure enough, they both get out. They both are set free and brought out of the jail and to Pharaoh the king. And as they come, just as Joseph had said, the cupbearer, he gets at least to live another day. And then sure enough, the baker was impaled. And just everything is as he had mentioned. But what happens in there? You have Joseph who's sitting in the jail going, all right, when am I getting out? Yeah, all right. And, tracking on down to verse 23, says this. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. He forgot him. He left him there for dead. He left him there with no chance of getting out, and actually shares that he was in for 2 more years. Hey, man, I'm going to interpret your dream. By the way, don't forget about me. Every time it comes around, he is just like, can I catch a break, God? Anybody ever feel like that? Anybody ever wake up in the day and just go, man, I just wish today I could catch a break? Man, I just wish today would be different than yesterday or the last 3 weeks or the last 10 weeks or the last year. God, please relent. God, please give me something that I can grab onto because today I don't feel like I can make it. And all the while, Joseph's been given this promise, and you and I are given this general promise and then this specific promise for our lives. And yet here he is in jail for another 2 years. Just wanting to give up. And I know where you've been in your mind in those times. Maybe not in the exact circumstances, but I've been there in places where I've thought to myself, and it creeps in, it's almost like a poison. It moves in and just goes, man, I just want to give up. I'm just done. I don't want to do this anymore. The great American poets, Belle Biv DeVoe, did a song about this. Some of you guys remember it. That girl is. Some of you guys are there. The other day I was listening to 92.1, The Beat. Those are some throwback jams, Jack. Like, those are good. And so I'm driving, and sure enough, poison. And it's like, she's driving me. Yeah, and all that. And so you're listening to that, and I was like, these guys, to a certain extent, they're preaching. They're like, listen, man, they're trying to tell their friend, that stuff is creeping in. There's something going on there that could go drastically wrong, and you think that everything is fine, but it's not fine. You actually need to turn from that thing because it's going to kill you. It is going to drown you. Now, for you and I, it might not be a female. I brought some illustrations, and no, I'm not going to throw these at you guys because that would be very hurtful and wrong. What are some of the things, let's just say that these represent the stuff that's happening in your life and in mine. What are some of the things that jump out that are hurtful, that try to drag us down? You're allowed to talk in church, I promise. What are some of the things? What? Bills. All right? I saw a bunch of people nodding like, I got bills right now. I don't even want to do that. Yeah, Destiny's Child talked about bills. I don't want to talk. Never know what you're going to get here. What else? What are some of the other things that jump in that try to derail you? Anxiety, teenagers, insecurity, work, medical. Nobody's saying spouse right now. Some of you are thinking it. And you know what? It's okay. There's all sorts of stuff that we kind of put in kind of creep into our lives. And let's just say that for lack of a better kind of moment is that this is your life, right? Like everything here is, right now, everything looks great. Like everything's good. You could see through it. There's lots of clarity here. Like even if I look at your face might be a little twisted through it, but like everything, even without it. So, and that wasn't nice. That was mean. But everything here, you can see through this and everything seems fine. But you just add just a little bit of stuff because life doesn't just sit here like all fancy. Like life ends up going a lot more like that. Yeah, that doesn't seem very good at all. Actually, that seems like it could cause a lot of chaos. Actually, I think that there's moments that could get really, really convoluted and blurry when we let some of those things like you guys talked about in. And the thing is, when we let them in, we don't really like to let a lot of that stuff leave. More often than not, we invite these things in, and we get them a home, we set them up in a room, and then our life just gets nutty, and we go, I just don't understand how my life got so derailed. And Belle Biv DeVoe would tell you, you let that little bit of poison in, and it started wrecking everything. But I encounter people all the time, and this has even been in my own life, because if you've ever found this, it's much easier to give advice to someone else than it is to see the scenario that you're in yourself, and then people are starting to talk to you, you're like, no, not me, you know? And then all of a sudden, one day down the road, a month goes by, a year goes by, and you go, oh yeah, they were real smart. And you start picking up the phone and open up your email and doing a lot of apologies, because you go, man, you were right. I just couldn't see it. Because everything was blurry. Everything was so tricky. And I tried to look through it. I thought life was okay. I thought that everything was fine. And that is why is this poison, these things come into our lives. These things that in and of themselves sometimes look really good and okay, but we let them in and they creep in and they derail us. And just like Joseph had this promise, you and I have a clear promise of freedom and redemption and joy. Now you might say, Jason, today is not the day I want to talk about joy. I have all sorts of things going on in my life. It's okay. Just because things are hard does not mean that the joy of God has vacated from you. Even when things are hard, it's actually the joy of God that sustains you. And it helps us see clearly, but we can't when all of that stuff is moving around. And this is what I want for you. We have a takeaway every week because I think sometimes, and this is just maybe it's more for me than it is for you guys, because I get lost and I'll hear the music and I'll see the videos, and then all of a sudden I'll go, man, that was a good message. And then, I'll sit, as I've listened to whoever when I was in church, and then I'll go home, and then like by Tuesday I'm like, oh, and then all the stuff. Why? Because I'm not seeing clearly and everything's crazy. And so we want to help you give a takeaway so that when you get to Wednesday, when you get to Friday, that you go, oh man, I need to keep tracking with this because God has something for me. Not a perfect life, not rainbows and butterflies life, but a constant hope and joy that He sustains us and He moves us forward. And so this is my hope for you and for me, is that we would protect our potential, protect your potential from poison so you can experience His promise. That you and I have a beautiful potential to have clarity and hope and redemption. And yet, when we don't protect it, when we don't lock those things out, there are things that get in and it messes everything up. And then life gets crazy. And then we look around and we're navigating through life and we can't see. And then we go, I don't understand why. And there's people who love you, who speak into your life and say, this is messy. And you go, it's not messy. It's not me. I saw they're a mess. They're a mess. And we go, no, your life is messy. And we deny it, and we make all kinds of justifications. And I'm not saying this is you. This is me too. My wife will look at me sometimes. We had a whole moment last evening about family pictures and stuff that went awry. And so we were doing all this, and there are moments where we see things, and people try to call it out, and we're like, no. But they love you. That's why we say around Forefront here that you and I need people who love God and love us, but love God more than us so they can say something hard to you and me, knowing that they're not scared that you'll get mad. They're scared that you would keep going the way you've always been going and interject into your life, into mine. And so my hope is that we would protect ourselves from all of this poison, because we have a potential to experience God's grace and love in a tangible way. And I'm not talking about, this like everybody's walking around like, why are you so happy, whatever. But I watch people who genuinely get this, who say, I am following God with every part of my being. And even when things get hard, they cling to his promise. And you may ask yourself, how do I do that? How do I get to a place where I can follow God's promise even when things are hard? Because right now, Jason, things are just hard, and all I want to do is, this is great, and we sang, and that Johnny Cash thing, Chris probably should have worn black, and we're doing all that, and we're moving through, but I just don't want to have joy today. There's this premise that I try to live by, and this would be my encouragement, is if you're going to push through and protect this, how do you protect it? How do you protect what God has for you so you can experience his promise? I don't have a foolproof way, because I think we all are still going to sin and fall short, but I do know that there are boundaries that we can put in place to help us with that. Now, nobody likes to talk about boundaries, because when we talk about boundaries, they're like, you mean like rein me in? I don't know about that. I don't want to have anybody over me. I'm my own boss. I'm my own person. I make my own decisions. Yeah, sometimes your decisions suck. I'm not saying that's bad. Their mine do too. All right, so when we're there, you and I are there, and we do that, at some point we have to have transparency to say, I don't always get it right, and neither do you. And so let's be honest. Heaven forbid we're honest in church, and then go, how do I guard that and protect that and put boundaries around that? Because you know what? Kids, we go to kids and parenting. When kids don't have any boundaries, they are off the rails. Kids, even with boundaries, can get off the rails. But I'll tell you this, as a parent of 3, and I watch them and doing student ministry for years, you know where kids thrive? Boundaries. It's the parents that actually put more things in place and then slowly move those boundaries out to give them the freedom to make choices. But at first, we can't do that on our own. And then all of a sudden, we come to God, we're excited, and then we don't put any boundaries in place. We wonder, why is my Christian life so crazy? Because we didn't put boundaries in place. So how do I protect that? How do you and I protect that in a beautiful way? And I would say that there's 3 things that kind of walk this through. Receive, redeem, and reject. We're going to walk through these 3 principles that I believe really help us in being able to protect this. The first one, and I tie these two, and maybe just so you get a little help with this, I always tie stuff to other things to help me remember. I have a horrible memory. And so for me, when I listen to a song like that Belle Biv DeVoe thing, I hear that song pop on the radio, I think about the poison in life. Whenever you're like, Jason, you're crazy. Just how my mind works, all right? And so when I go to movies or when I watch TV shows, I point everything back, and it helps me connect back. And this first piece of this, receiving, really begins to point back to, and if you're taking notes, you can write down Romans 12:2. There's this passage in the New Testament of the Bible. This writer, Paul, writes this in Romans 12:2. He says, you know what? You are being transformed. Your life, as you follow God, you've trusted in his promise, you're being transformed so that you can test what what is happening in life and know what God's will is as you move forward. That basically what that's saying is when you follow God and you're really moving in Him, that you are going to begin to have wisdom. And you're going to make choices that are different than you did before. That you're going to follow after God's will instead of your own. Now, that doesn't mean that your life and your all the different things that make you necessarily change. It's people like, if I follow God, then I won't be able to be like joke around, or I won't be able to like go to the bar and have a drink or whatever. I'm like, no. When you follow God, we talk about like His will and what happens there. It begins to transform us, and my heart gets different, and my mind becomes different. It's been renewed. And so as we start seeing these things, when people interact with me and someone hurts me, before the old Jason, as I got hurt, would just want to be like, you got what? And start going after him, right? But now when I get hurt, over time, what happens is I'm less to jump out and go, man, I wonder what's going on in their life that led them to a place that they would do something like that. And our hearts change, and it gives us a better perspective and wisdom. And the person that I think of in this is Dumbledore from Harry Potter. Any Harry Potter fans? Yeah, some, like 5. And so, sorry, I'm a kid at heart, and that's just the way I roll. And so Dumbledore said this. He said, dark and difficult times lie ahead. Soon we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy. And what I would say for you and I in this receive aspect is that we are going, everything that we encounter, the great things, the awful things, the whole spectrum of that, we're going to receive all of those and begin to have wisdom in what is the next step in that. All right, everything that, if you're going to have an awful day and you're going to bring your awful day to me, all right, I'm going to receive it. But what do I do next? As I'm protecting this, as I'm looking, I'm saying, I have a trajectory. God has given me a promise, and I need to protect that so I can see that later, because I don't want any poison to get into my life so that I can not see clearly. The next piece of that is to redeem. You might say, you've encountered this and you've received this. You have a choice now to either redeem or reject it. And the first side of that is to redeem it, to say, all right, this might not be perfect. Whatever's been handed to me, I think that this can be changed. Maybe you have a coworker that you just go, no, Jason, I need to reject that. No, I've encountered them this week. That what if the reason you may, and I've been there before, you hate your job. You don't want to go. You wake up in the morning going, God, if there's a way for Jesus, send him, because I don't want to go today. You've hit office space level. I'm just going to set the building on fire. This kind of thing that you go, what if God has put you in a place for there, even though you loathe your job, because that person's dealing with so much weight and so much hurt and so much pain, and they show up at your cubicle or your side of the work site and job site. You're part of the ship. Maybe they've walked over. You're a stay-at-home parent, and they've walked over to your house, and they show up every single day. And you're going, God, just move them. Just transfer them. Just do whatever, but don't let them here. And God's going, I put you in that exact place at that exact moment, at that exact time, because I need you to be the one to redeem and show them love. And there's things that you want in your heart of hearts. You want to reject it. But God hasn't called you to do that. You want to, but there's a little piece of you that just goes, I know that I shouldn't. I know that I need to be here for this. And when you're looking at the poisons that could come into your life, there are moments where it looks like it could be hurtful. It looks like it could be bad. And that's why you have to be able to receive things in a wise manner as you're transformed by God, so you can see the difference between something that can wreck you and someone that you can take from that state, and you can begin to make them whole again. That's when we get into this piece of redeeming. The other side of that is rejecting things. It's over in James chapter 4, verse 7. It says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. It's like when Joseph, as he ran through, he's like, dang, this cougar's trying to get me. I'm out. And he runs. He flees. He said, that girl, he already heard Bell Bivdo. That girl's poison. I'm out. I'm done. I'm not going to deal with this. And he said, that poison will not enter my life. That poison will have no place here. But I fear that for many of us, we don't flee. we don't reject. What we do, and I kind of pair this up with, how many of you guys have seen the original Willy Wonka? Yeah. If you haven't, or maybe you did, but you just don't remember because it was a different time back then. When this movie came out and people were flipping out, they were like, man, this movie's trippy. There's weird stuff going on. The premise of it, I wrote in college a 14-page paper on this in Bible college. Because watch each of the characters in this. Each one down the road thought that something was okay. And they brought it into their life. And it wrecked them. They invited it in. Surely this looks innocent enough. This looks okay. Everything is going to be all right. Nobody can tell me what to do. I'm my own boss. I do my own thing. And one after another, they opened it up, closed the lid, and then life started happening. And it was their very downfall. Until Charlie. Slugworth came to him in the dark alley. Grandpa Joe all of a sudden could move again. Got a golden ticket. And at the very end, he takes that everlasting gobstopper out and he goes and he sets it on there. What did he say? So shines a deed in a dreary world. He knew that he had to reject the very thing that could eat away at him. You know what's interesting is sometimes if we kind of take this egg analogy a different direction, there are times where we think, an egg is pretty strong in general. If you try to press on it, which I'm not going to do because then I'm going to get this, but you can actually go pretty hard on each end and not crack an egg. But it's until when you turn it on its side. But people think that they can venture through life. You and I, most of us think that we can kind of venture through life and do this on our own. That I'm going to work this through, Jason. Yeah, I get the whole redeem, receive, reject, and I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do this by myself. But you know what's interesting about an egg? If we were to lay cartons up here and fill them up and do them, together, you can actually walk on eggs like they're concrete. They won't break. Because together they will distribute the weight evenly so that no one breaks under the pressure. No one is going to be sitting in a place where they go, man, I invited something in and it got shaken up. We go, no, let's work this out together. Let's be in a place where we're all strong together. That's why this weekly is so important. That's why we'd be like, you guys talk about those gel grips all the time. Gosh, where's my chopstick? We talk about gel grips all the time because that's where life transference happens. It's where when things get hard, so far in gel groups, the first week, this is what I've heard about from different people. People that finally opened up about almost getting divorced. People opening up and needing support because they recently had a miscarriage. People opening up because they're getting ready to kick their child out and they just don't know how. Because their child's off the rails. And this is the last straw. People saying, I have sexual addiction and I don't know what to do and I need help. People saying they have no idea what it means to be loved by God because they've never been told that they were loved by their moms and their dads. The list goes on. People that are saying that they need help. And when we look at Joseph's life and we see this beautiful collision with, like Jess said, with our crazy to his freedom, and it collides and all this stuff happens, the only thing that I know to do is to encourage you to get on board with God, to be all in with God, to say, I want my life to be about him. And if you're not with him, my prayer is that you would just say, what am I waiting for? I'm not going to leave today without surrendering my life to God. And we got horse trough up here because that's how we roll, filled with water. We got stuff for you to change into too. My hope is that you would say, why have I kept waiting? Why? Because I somehow could get all my ducks in a row. We talked about that before. God made the ducks. He's going to get them in a row all by himself. He'll take care of that. There's nothing you can do to get ready for God's grace. It's already there. But here's the other side of that. There's some of us that have experienced that. We've been there, done that. We were baptized, we've followed him, and we do it, and we're tracking, and now we're just not really tracking. My hope would be is that you would hear when a friend is talking to you, when a loved one, when a jail group leader, when a pastor says, hey, you got a lot of poison going on. You can't see it. You got to get that stuff out. You got to move forward. Because there's a promise that lies ahead. And it is absolutely beautiful. Why don't you pray with me?